Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's, audio Zoom. Um, we are so happy you are here. For those of you listening sometime in the future, I am Jan Jeremias, and for more than 35 years, health and wellness have been integral to my life and work. Over the past 2 decades, I've integrated my background in clinical research with a deep commitment to holistic wellness to support both people and their pets in living longer, healthier, and more connected lives. My professional focus is helping individuals understand the full scope of their well being, physical, mental, and emotional, but in translating that understanding into a practical, meaningful strategy for everyday health. My approach emphasizes clarity, compassion, and sustainable practices that fit into real life without overwhelm. Um, I remain deeply inspired by creativity, and everything revolves around connection. And so I'm grateful to walk this path alongside my dear friend and collaborator, Mary Jane McQueen. And together we share a commitment to bring more kindness into the world, one creative expression, one conscious breath, and one heartfelt conversation at a time. So a heartfelt thank you to you, Mary Jane, and to each of you um, who continue to show up with open hearts or to listen with open hearts. This community shines because of all of you, and I'm truly grateful to be a part of it. Mary Jane.
Thanks, Jan. Yeah, we definitely are a good team, and I don't mean just Jan and me. I mean all of us here as part of this community. We're a good team, just remaining here and coming together as we can each week, and you know, um, doing what we feel will uplift and inspire and transform others' lives and perhaps our own too. And so, yes, I am Mary Jane McQueen, and I have my own creative studio. And in my studio, I love to co-create beautiful brands and logos for my fellow entrepreneurs to help them get their mission and vision out into the world. And as well, I love to do all the other things that might come as part of graphic design for perhaps invitation design, posters, brochures, whatever that may look like. My creative brain likes to do different things, and I love to connect with different folks in those capacities too. And of course, I really um, love being in spaces like these where we can have gentle, intentional conversations and we create spaces where there's a sense of sacredness and safety, where we invite you to slow down, soften, and reconnect with yourself. That is a key component as to what makes me get up each day, and as I support my clients and in this space as well, to spread kindness, empathy, and compassion in a world that truly needs it. And of course, starting with self first, because we need that nurturing first, and so we can spread that out into the world. And so I welcome you here. And just to remind you that there's nothing you need to do or achieve here, of course. It's really only an invitation to arrive exactly as you are in this moment. And I thank you, Jan, for walking this path with me as well. And I will begin with a short poem that we felt was suited to today's conversation. And it's called The Guest House. And it's by Rumi. It says, "This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes because each has been sent as a guide from beyond."
Thank you so much, Mary Jane, for sharing that poem. Um, not being overly dramatic when I say that I think that poem actually changed my trajectory. I'll just say changed how I kind of looked at my experiences, my emotions in my life. So I'm really glad that we decided to use it today. So, hello, friends. Welcome. Each of us arrives carrying many stories, many feelings, and many inner voices. Like the teaching of the two wolves, we hold with us both light and shadow, the parts shaped by love, courage, and compassion, and the parts shaped by fear, pain, and protection. These wolves are not enemies. They are messengers. Each one carries wisdom about what we have lived, what we long for, and what we need in order to feel safe and whole. This gathering is an invitation into belonging, not the kind that asks us to hide or perfect ourselves, but the kind that begins when we allow ourselves to be seen as we truly are. True belonging is born from awareness. When we turn toward every part of ourselves with curiosity instead of judgment and with kindness instead of fear. Here you are invited to bring both your light and your shadow into the circle, knowing that neither disqualifies you from being here. Shadow does not mean something is wrong with you. It simply means that there's a name for the part of us that has been unheard, unspoken, or misunderstood. When we welcome these parts with compassion, they soften. They no longer need to fight for attention. In listening to them, we discover resilience, insight, and a deeper sense of connection to ourselves and to one another. Together, we create a space where awareness becomes a form of love, a space where we can pause, breathe, and listen to what is moving inside us, a space where we remember that wholeness does not come from choosing one wolf over the other, but from learning how they can walk together in harmony. May this circle be a place of safety and reflection. May it be a place where every voice within you is welcome. And may we learn side by side that belonging is not something we earn, it's something we remember. You are welcome here. All your parts are welcome here. All your roles are welcome here. Welcome.
It was lovely, Jan. Lovely reflection. I always enjoy reading, or not reading, hearing your reflections. I'll be fine. Um, just really just those insights. It's true, because all are welcome here. Um, because as you said, that all these parts, these are the parts that make us our whole being, and being aware of them, being consciously aware of them, is such an important practice. Sometimes we don't want to be aware of them.
Oh,
Sometimes
how
those
true.
wolves are, sometimes those wolves are just, we were like, yeah, I picture, in movies, where they're running away from, animals or something chasing them, and they're like, they close the door and then they peek out the door and the thing is right there outside the door. So I'm like, yeah, sometimes I just want to close that door. Going
Yeah,
quietly. You didn't see me.
exactly. It's like it's like seeing, like you mentioned, it's like putting, seeing a horror movie or something, or watching something that's scary on TV or the movies or something, and you put
Yeah.
something over your head, thinking to yourself, okay, well, you put that blanket over or you cover your eyes and you're like, okay, it's not there, but that's what it's like sometimes, right?
Yes. But what a value there is when we actually are brave enough to open the door and welcome in that wolf, so that we're better able to understand what it is. I mean, I don't know if I necessarily recommend people actually open a door to an actual wolf, but hey.
But isn't that sometimes what it feels like? You
Mhm,
know, I think that the I think sometimes that the idea or the notion or the feeling that you have that within yourself is a scary feeling. You
mhm,
know, I think we don't like to admit it. Some of those thoughts or feelings are literally like parts, like, which you would be, if you saw it in someone else, you would run away, which I think we do because I think we sense that,
mhm,
or we might run away. And so I think that admitting and like use the word bravery or courage, like
mhm.
courageously admitting
Yes.
that you have that, that's a part of you, that there are aspects of yourself that and emotions that come up that you really wish you would rather not possess, but they are part of you. And I think one of the things that I shared in the opening that I really liked is, when we start to look at those things and realize the needs they're trying to convey to us, you know, the feeling, the feelings of like, whatever it is of anger or jealousy or fear about things are really based on needs within ourselves that like we don't feel are completed or things that are not, like have not been fulfilled for us or we feel they're missing. And I think when we look at it like that, there is great wisdom
Mhm.
that's revealed in those wolves because we get to see what's important to us, what our values are in a way. What,
That's right.
yeah. So I think, if we can have the courage to look at them, sometimes there's a lot of information for us.
Well, exactly. And I guess the whole thing too is as like by standing courageously and acknowledging our vulnerabilities, um it and sort of embracing that feeling of being uncomfortable because goodness knows when we're looking at those wolves, sometimes it is very uncomfortable. But just really that's what's going to bring you into true living your true authentic self, your true authentic whole being self.
Hmm.
It's just it definitely it's definitely practice for sure.
Hmm.
But by sharing our authenticity with others, as we all know here in this space for sure, is that there's something that people can relate to recognize the same vulnerabilities of in themselves and realize that it's okay to stand in that courage, stand in that vulnerability, and love our vulnerabilities because, as you mentioned, they're often here um, to bring us a lesson that we still need to learn. Um, you know, Sometimes my wolves keep coming back over and over again, and I'm like, really? Didn't I deal with you already? I thought so, but
Hmm.
but it's a process as we know. So it's just but standing each time, looking at the shadow, looking at the wolf, and then embracing that wolf and saying, you know, what was it that you've been saying? It belongs. Is that what you've been saying, Jan? Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. This belongs
Yes,
or it
this
belongs.
belongs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you bring up because I think they come back. And I used to get very, I've been really practicing not getting upset when it resurfaces, when all of a sudden, like you said, there's this like, oh my gosh, I thought I dealt with this already, or I thought this was over, or I thought I had resolved this with myself within myself. And then something else happens and all of a sudden it resurfaces. And I I've been working very hard, like working, meaning it's very much on my mind, sort of in my being lately. It's just another opportunity to practice. That's all it is. It's just another opportunity to exercise that muscle of like me practicing self-compassion and allowing it to be there. And then also, that whole practice of allowing it to be there, of being aware of it and not trying to push it away necessarily. Because I mean, I think we all know here that the moment we push it away, what happens? It just resurfaces somewhere else. It just ends up, somehow it sort of seeps out like through the cracks of your being, where
Mhm.
maybe it's a sarcastic tone, or maybe it's an impatience, or maybe you end up getting angry at something or overreacting in a way because the energy basically needs to get out in some form. And usually, I've always found that basically, if I don't deal with it, it's going to get dealt with, just usually or expressed, let's say,
Mhm.
even if it's like, and it's usually not in the way you want it expressed, like you end up lashing out at somebody who doesn't deserve it, I could give examples, you end up getting upset on the phone with someone who does not really, it's not necessary and it's not needed. And
Yes.
then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. And yes, owning that to me, you acknowledge that and maybe, apologize or you're responsible for that behavior. But I think when you start to address it a little sooner, where you look kind of like you don't bury it,
Yes.
you know, I'm an expert at burying. Did
I'll,
that a
I'll
long
I'll
time.
take I'll take that in a relative sense, not in a literal sense.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I knew you would, but thank you. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I could get an A plus in that.
I love the one of the articles we were reading, the thing from Medium where it was talking about like there were really all complex blends of traits, and how important it is about acknowledging both light and shadow helps us to live more authentically. And the quote that came from that was, "As humans, we are the same way, each of us a unique shade of gray." I
That's
love
right. I
that.
know. I know. I also loved that because I think it's so true. I think we also tend to label people like these
Mhm.
are bad people and these are good people.
Right.
And the more I think you're in the world and you actually meet people, like and actually connect with people, you realize everybody's a gray, like they have parts of both, like there are, we all have good qualities and what we might label as, I don't know, I don't like to label them as bad, but, you know, traits that we wish we didn't have
Challenging
and
traits.
challenging things. And we kind of have to learn how to work with that. But none of us is all good. And, like our conversation we had with Darlene yesterday, if everybody was the same and everybody was good, life would be really boring. Sometimes I
Absolutely,
want a little
absolutely
boredom,
sure.
sometimes, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's a little bit mundane and
Oh,
boredom,
yeah,
but a
I
moment
agree.
here and there, a moment here
Yeah.
and there. Seamus, please.
Yeah, thanks, Jan. Like that's beautiful. Like yeah, I've heard that poem before as well, and it like as you said, it really hit me. I wrote down a couple of words like as you're reading it as well, Mary Jane, like around emotion, like it's a special guest. You know what I mean? And I think the meanness of just allowing myself to be me, and create space for every guest who comes. And sometimes I want to push away some of those guests. I think they're trouble, like, the bad guest and the labels we attach. And oh no, I'm not ready to kind of host that guest because I have so many judgments about that guest and what their energy is and blah, 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 whatever. But what we're talking about here is seeing the value and getting beneath the labels. And I think that's what you're talking about there as well, John, a little bit, I think. Around seeing the gift in every guest, like which Rumi talks about, like and coming operating from a space where we can actually set aside the labels, the kind of the superficial maybe stuff that gets in the way of the real value of what our emotions and the information from which our emotions are emerging. They're there for a reason and they belong. Going back to what we talked about, I think in previous weeks as well, they're there for a reason and they belong. And even that is a great source of comfort to actually allow us to kind of be with and be present with every guest and treat every guest as a special guest and to accept the unique gift that each guest brings. And I think if you can actually, from that space, allow yourself to value and understand that there's no threat in this guest or the labels I associate or attach to this guest are, barriers to me seeing the value of welcoming and getting curious with and understanding and knowing the guests, understanding the value of the gift that the guest is bringing. I think that's what we're talking about here, and that's the power of belonging. And I think suppose the last thing you were talking about there was when we don't invest our energy in really understanding it, our energy, I think, gets lost and is distracted and diverted into something that doesn't really hit. And when we take, and this is the experiential part of this, I think, when we really truly commit to getting curious with the guest and seeing the guest's value, that is a great, in my experience, I suppose, personal experience, that is a great investment of energy, and there's a great and immediate payback on that investment and deployment of that energy in that direction towards maybe distraction and not going there and superficially dealing with something. And then we have to deal with it again and again and again. We never get to root cause, I guess. And I think that's maybe what was coming to mind as you were describing energy and how we kind of engage but don't really engage. And then we still have that latent energy that really hasn't been kind of, we're still carrying a burden, or we still haven't dealt with the root cause of, the source information, if you want, around getting to understand the gift that each guest is bringing. So, and again, we kind of just tinker at it, we look at it and we prod it maybe, but we don't allow ourselves to really understand it. And I think that's the depth of what's going on in today's conversation, I think, is allowing ourselves to, again, for me, breath is a great door opener to space and noticing and welcoming something that we felt we just wanted to push away before. So yeah, that's kind of what's coming up today, that I think is really important. I think for every person that ever exists, every that has ever existed and will exist in the future, is just welcoming and creating a space from within ourselves that we see the value of information outside, but more importantly, the value coming from within as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Seamus. Yeah, I think that when you were just sharing all that, one of the things that came to my mind, like, was this feeling of, which I put in the comments, and there was, quite a bit in some of the articles for our preparing, was this feeling that when we don't address and we suppress those difficult emotions, or we don't reveal all the parts of ourselves, first of all, we never truly belong. And we're constantly changing ourselves in this quest, either for perfection or to fill I want to say, that space, that emptiness. Because really, if you think about it, that one-sided experience of, let's say, all the good things is very shallow. Like, the opposite adds depth. There is a richness that comes. It's kind of like a balance in a meal or a dish. It's like, when you have something sweet, a lot of times you add salt because it brings out the sweetness. And I think the same thing happens. Like, first of all, it's unbelievable pressure to be able to maintain that sort of our idea of perfection. Our idea of the good wolf is like exhausting. And second of all, we end up in this constant quest for that perfection, and we end up looking outside of ourselves so much, which is where that external kind of like, okay, facade, or I'm going to change myself so that, or just manipulate myself, or manipulate every situation so that and try to control everything outside of ourselves so that we can maintain that. It's impossible to maintain. I mean, not to talk about like burnout. That's burnout, that constant, quest.
There was one word that Rumi mentioned there. It struck me because it came up in this chapter I'm writing as well for our second book, Jan, is around meanness. Like, not meanness, but meanness, like the roseness of a rose, like it's like the tableness of a table. All we need to be is the meanness of me, like me as I am, and welcoming that. I mean, that's part of what we're talking about here, is we spend so much time worried about what other people think. We kind of we totally lose connection with that meanness quality and value that that's all we need to do. We just need to be like a rose. All a rose needs to do, all a blade of grass needs to do is be the blade of grass. A rose doesn't try to be a different rose or another color or judge. All it has to do is to just be its beautiful self. And that's how it contributes fully, basically, to the world within itself and outside itself. Just the rose, just be the rose. And again, there's a great lesson there for human beings, I think, to, fully just be yourself. And that's all we need to do. And that's an experiential thing. When you trust that, that's all you need to do. And authentically go out there and just, and this is part of vulnerability. Brené Brown talks about it, like that's a part of the story of the courage it takes to be yourself. It kind of comes with being vulnerable. And again, a rose is very vulnerable and it can get, cut down and put into a vase maybe, but it still doesn't stop it being the beautiful rose that it is. And I think maybe that's part of the lesson is just being vulnerable as part of this process, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I listened to a wonderful, I don't know, it was like it wasn't a TED Talk. It was just a video Brene Brown had done this week on belonging. And then read a few, I love her work, and so read a few things, and yeah, because I actually have some excerpts from an article that Mary Jane and I used to prepare about vulnerability and about belonging. And her quote is, "True belonging only happens when we present our authentic and perfect selves to the world." You know, and I think belonging to ourselves is no different. We only can belong to ourselves if we truly accept all the aspects of ourselves, even the stuff we'd rather wish wasn't there. Either way, we have to become vulnerable with ourselves or be authentic with ourselves and not deny anything about ourselves. And then we express that in the world. I mean, it's like that's the true, like kind of like experience of belonging. Maybe I'll share the video in the comments for this because it was really good. And I don't know, it's like 15 minutes, but it really goes through this whole experience that we all have, and even her personal experiences of how she realized how hard she worked, like, and this whole idea of fitting in and belonging. And, if you think about even the words fitting in, it's like you're trying to make yourself a specific shape when you're not that shape, you know, sort of like when they genetically modify vegetables so they can package them better. Like that's what it made me think of. The fact that they started to try to make square tomatoes because they knew they could kind of fit them in a box easier. And I'm like, thank you, Al, for the tomato. I love that. And so how do you make it? Like, I mean, to me, that's so like, how do you make a square tomato? It's like tomatoes are just round and they're meant to be around just like that kind of smooth outside, kind of curvy kind of shape, just like a rose,
Rubenesque.
It's like it would be like trying to make a rose, look different. A rose is a rose.
Is a rose.
Yes, it's a rose. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I could resist adding that in.
Yes, I knew you couldn't.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's the whole concept about, looking at our I love the concept, right, that from the articles that we're reading where they were talking about, shadow work is an act of compassion because that's the thing, not confrontation. So it's about opening the door and hugging that friend even if you don't feel like hugging them right at that moment, and bringing allowing them into the house, as Rumi was saying, or a welcome guest into the house. So not confronting them and slamming the door in the face, but saying, come in, and giving them a hug and greeting. So I just love that, the act of compassion, not confrontation. It seemed like such an important message because sometimes that's what we do. We want to slam the door shut going, no, I'm not ready to look at that right now. Um, but really by welcoming it in, there's so much value to letting that in as well. So
Yeah. And, one of the things that you said, welcoming, and I remember when I first heard the poem, well, I mean, I can remember exactly where I was. I remember when I heard it for the first time, I remember thinking to myself, like, how do you welcome in those aspects? Like, that's really like a lofty goal. It's one thing when they
Mhm.
come in, it's one thing when they show up. And to me, that's like even like like a really profound and dramatic kind of step when you don't want to run away from something and you allow it to be there when it shows up.
Mhm.
But the whole idea of the shifting it to a welcoming of it always seemed a bit far-fetched to me. I'm like, I don't know if I could really welcome this in. I think I can allow it to be there once it's there, which to me was like a huge, like I said, welcoming it was almost too lofty a goal. I was like, okay, well, let me start or let me work with what's being presented to me. And then if I'm in a comfortable space, maybe I start to explore or something, kind of thing, or I welcome it in because it gives me a lesson, or I know I need to learn something. But I think, personally, from all, transparency and authenticity, um, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, the idea of welcoming something like that in was just like this, you know,
Yes.
seemed very, almost out of reach in a lot of ways. But I was very happy with just being like, okay, let me just allow what's coming in without me inviting it.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Well, I guess it depends on how you really look at the word welcoming, right?
Okay,
Because
right, exactly.
because welcoming can just literally mean opening the door and allowing something to come in,
Exactly.
like a
No, it
butler.
could be right, like a butler. I mean, or it can be like, I guess I was almost interpreting it as inviting it in. And I wasn't sure I could actually invite it in, I couldn't send out a beautiful invite that you create and say, "Oh, please come." Like
Oh, come
I'm
on.
sit at my table. That was not probably going to happen, but I could welcome them in the fact that I allowed them to be there. Yeah.
I don't know
But I
why,
think this
Jan.
is part.
Go ahead, Seamus. Sorry, go
Sorry,
ahead.
Mary Jane. Yeah, but I think this is part of an important human kind of process as well, John, is not to be overzealous, I think, and go straight from kind of denial into full acceptance. It's kind of like grief.
Uh-huh.
There's phases and there's processes, and everyone has their own way of getting there. And I think that's part maybe of what I experienced that in my own journey, I suppose, is trying to actually um, even just recently, I would say I was forcefully trying to be still. You know what I mean? And I had to kind of really check myself to say, the harder I forced myself to breathe and experience stillness and the power of stillness, the more difficult it became. And I think that's an experiential thing that every person is invited then to kind of to find their way, navigate a way that works for them in a phased kind of step by step process, rather than going from being totally closed to being totally open. There's several stages, I guess, on that path, and I think is important and gives some hope maybe for people to realize that it's a small step by step process, and even moving from a place of complete disconnection from seeing the value of an emotion, or any of the guests who are coming seeing that they're a destructive force, even being open to think there could be some element of value from something that you labeled as being totally terrible or bad before. That maybe is the first small step, and then maybe there's 5 or 10 or 20 incremental steps to the whole experiencing of, now I get it. Now I see what I couldn't see before. And again, everyone will have a different pathway through that process, whether it's in 5 steps or 55 steps around, okay, now I get it. And it kind of reminded me of what Rumi wrote as well about what's in the way is the way. And we all get to kind of move through that phase transition from engaging with something that we thought as being something that we had to completely avoid, into going 180 with, okay, I'm now going to welcome this in, because now through that journey I've figured out a way and see now with kind of fresh, and through a new lens, I suppose, or a fresh perspective, Ah, okay. And then that's the experiential part of this. When you begin to kind of experience what that feels like. You mentioned shallow earlier, like the shallow approach of pushing that away. It can feel, powerful, but it's shallow. Then through that process of allowing and engaging and getting curious with and understanding and feeling the value of the gift that every emotion brings, that's where the depth, in contrast to the shallowness emerges. And I think that's what Rumi is getting at as well, like in that poem and in what he encourages to, in the simplicity of what's in the way is the way. We then get to choose how we kind of engage with what we feel we couldn't possibly engage, or how we engage with something that we labeled as having no value before. Actually, that is the only value when I begin to actually understand that, engaging with that understanding and going towards that, um, you know, getting going towards what's in the way is in an experiential way the way when I make my way through it in whatever pace it works for me.
Hmm. No, I love the idea that you were or the words that you brought up, Seamus, about basically basically it's timing and when you're ready. And I think that that's why, I mean, that's why it's a process because I think at points you kind of like, and that's why things resurface, because I think that you process them and you look at them on a level, and it might be a very superficial level in the beginning. And then something happens, or you have a few other experiences, talk about experiences. You have a few other experiences, and all of a sudden something happens again, and you're able to look at it deeper. And you're allowed to reflect and get curious, and all of a sudden something else is revealed. And then, it happens again, and you get a different thing comes to you about it, a deeper, um, a deeper insight comes. And then all of a sudden, oh, and you're like, and there's a part of you that was like, oh, now I get it. And I think that there's no rushing that process because I think that it happens from the capacity from where we are at the moment. You know, we can't, we can't rush it. It just, we're not ready. We don't have the whatever the necessary, not in a bad way, but we don't have the maybe the wisdom that we had. So all of a sudden we gain wisdom and we're like, oh, okay, let's look at it this way. Or maybe if I change my perspective and I look at it from a different perspective, I could get different insight and more insights about whatever it is, the situation, about how I respond in this situation, about how I'm being triggered by this situation, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, now it's even deeper and I get it even further and it tells me even more. And I think that there is this readiness. And like, I love how you compared it to grief because I think that that's very much how grief is. Um, and however, like, how many things that have happen to us, experiences of loss or trauma, I don't think that we're ready when things necessarily, we're not ready when it happens immediately. I think we're too raw.
That's really true. But what a beautiful strength it is to show up in our vulnerability. Um, you know, when it comes to our fear or grief or uncertainty, because as I was mentioning earlier, it's that feeling that it creates a deeper connection in a sense with other people, because other people can see in authenticity your vulnerability by allowing standing in your truth, whatever that truth is. Um, it really allows them to see a way to trust in you even more because just because they can see often themselves in perhaps an experience. They may not have had the identical experience, but they can certainly recognize their shadow parts, or even not their shadow parts, the light, to that they can recognize that, and it brings them into a fuller understanding of themselves, I feel too. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. Al, please.
Yeah, so important what Seamus said earlier on about stillness. So there's talking about Rumi. Rumi has come out with the concept of the stillness. It's like silence is like an ocean, and a speech is like a river. When the ocean is searching for you, don't walk into the river. Listen to the ocean. So
Mm.
it shows that the power of stillness is so strong. That when we are aware, so when it comes to the awareness, which is the topic of this evening, for me here in Malaysia, which morning for you, so or afternoon for Seamus and Paul. The awareness acronym is the alertness with appreciation, realizing, empowerment, nurturing, endless stillness sound. So there's a very, very long acronym. So I hope that people knows that the stillness, power of stillness is part of our alertness that we can be aware of every day, and we should appreciate it in such a way that we're aware of the oxygen that we breathe, aware of the trees and the leaves that are moving in the background in the trees, and also empowering it and nurturing it. Well, the stillness of the sound from the oceans and also the river where we have our speech when we're talking. So basically, the ocean and the river does not meet each other until it's a certain point. So basically, yeah, this I'll put that in the chat. Uh, a long acronym this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. I love this idea because I think that awareness is something that we can practice in our, the way you say it, in our everyday lives. And I think that we all do, like we all here do that. And the fact that I think it is becoming aware of like, you know, or you could just call it as I think it's Mary Jane's word for the year, presence, um, is one of the words. And so I think that awareness, presence, of being present, because I think that that teaches us awareness or guides us toward awareness in our lives when we are aware of what, if we are present, if we are aware of our surroundings, of, like you say, the trees, the sky. I paused this morning because the sunrise here was spectacular. And I just took a moment because it was just, coming up and the colors were like amazing. And I just thought like it was just this awareness of it. It was like, a pause and an appreciation. Also, a reminder for me this morning that, you know, of the miracle, you know, it's like it was pretty miraculous. I'm like, okay, you know, even with everything that's happening that I might label as bad or hard or challenging, there is that. And that's, there's this element of hope then. I mean, there's just, I think awareness can, we can bring it in all the time. And I think it's necessary. Absolutely. Like almost, you know, a necessity. Yes. Yeah, it was gratitude for that beauty. I'm using a new app on my phone. Um I just want to get the right, that's called Minder.
Minder.
And Minder, it's actually, I'm testing it for Eric Zimmer.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, so you can have different kind of prompts or
Mm,
whatever, or different sort of themes. Mine is gratitude. And so then there's like three questions there, it's three things you have to check off a few times a day. So mine are: name one thing you're lucky to have. What are you grateful for right now? Who, meaning people, made your day better. And so, you
lovely.
know, yeah. And so you could do different ones, like, different sort of themes. That was the theme I chose. But yeah, I mean, I do think that gratitude for the beauty or a pause, even that kind of awareness obviously is a step toward just overall awareness. And Paul, welcome, Paul.
Thanks for having me, Jan, Mary Jane. Hi, everybody. So I love that, Jan. I've I did the heroic coaching. I still do all the readings and stuff. And there's something in there that's a virtue meditation that, well, I sort of revert to it together with the Ho'oponopono prayer. Um, when you wake up at 4 or 5 o'clock, you just want those, irritating little thoughts to go away, or your brain to go off and finding solutions like, no, I'm not in the mood for this now. So you do the prayer. But the virtue meditation is something that, you know, you learn something from every time, and you use the words hope and gratitude. I'm not going to do a virtue meditation. Can I just talk you through the different parts of it? Just 2 minutes.
Sounds great.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it starts, and every time you do it, you discover something different. So it starts with, may I be wise. I know the game I'm playing and how to play it well. And there's something in the well itself, which is wisdom, energy, and love. And then, may I have self mastery. Um, I'm willing to play the game well. I'm committed to playing the game well today. And then, may I be courageous. I'm willing to act in the presence of fear, anxiety, stress, obstacles, etc. Then, may I be loving. May I be present and kind and generous and encouraging and patient and what's that word I struggle with? Compassionate. Sorry. And then the next one is, may I have hope. I know that my future will be better than my present because I will do everything to make it so, which is for me, has become part of that, almost like a battle cry in the morning. Like, I'm turning up today, every day. And then you have, may I be grateful. Um, I appreciate everything I have. And then you can use whatever day to your God you want to wish, add in there. I just say, um, I thank the universe for everything I have. And then the next one is, may I be curious. I see what's working and what needs work. It's a really good reflection to have at that moment if you go through it a few times. And then the last one is, may I be zesty. I'm energized as I practice my fundamentals to give the world all I've got. So, yeah, for me, that is a great way to anchor every day, to book your mark and start the day with, to reflect and to practice self awareness.
That's beautiful, Paul. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I love that, Paul. If you could, like, if you don't mind, if you could share that with maybe in the comments or whatever, or if you pass it on to either Mary Jane or myself, we can share it with everybody because it's wonderful.
No, definitely will. Thanks, Jan. Thanks, Mary Jane.
You know, absolutely. I love all of them. And I think it's a wonderful way to start the day, you know, to begin with that. Um,
It's also an interesting way to end the day, especially the
I know, I
reflection.
was going to say, as I was saying it, that was going to be my next comment. It's like, oh, on the other hand, it's probably a good way to close the day.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
go
especially
ahead.
you know what? A lot of people, they go to bed and don't sleep because their mind's full from the day.
Hmm.
And we talk about journaling, but at the end of there's a practice where you do like a journal. You just have a conversation and journal out. I mean, I don't need to do that. It doesn't work for me. Um, I am really good at reflecting and getting through the layers of what's annoyed me and then letting it go. Because when you identify, um, thanks, Seamus, when you identify these things, what happens is they come to light. They're not just these hidden thoughts and emotions of subconscious things that are attached to you during the day, and you're able to just let them go. So I mean, it's a great practice during the day. I mean, we all do mindfulness to some degree or another, and we all know the stop technique where we just check in with ourselves. And it's a great way to, sometimes you have an encounter with people and you have these either they make you feel great. I think, Jan, you used to talk a lot about this. Some people make you feel uplifted, or they make you feel icky. And
Mhm.
this is the same, so in that way, you sort of just check in with yourself. And at the end of the day, a nice reflection on the day is not to go, oh, what didn't work? Because it's a negative. Well, you go, what worked? Then you have a positive, or positives, and you like the gratitude. What am I grateful for? And then you can go, what didn't work, and then you don't have a victim thing about what didn't work. You look at it. What didn't work today? How could I have done better? This happened with that person. They don't make me feel good. I don't want to deal with them. And you can analyze it. You can just go with your gut and say, oh, really don't like people who blame and do this nonsense, that nonsense, whatever. I'm thinking of a particular person at the moment that I said, you know what? I can't work with you. I can't work with your energy. I can't work with who you are. And then, because why must I suffer that? And then the other thing is, and if it's something you can change, you can go, so what do I do next time? What can I do? So, like, people do the same, make the same mistake over and over again. And then they go, um, oh God, why does this keep happening? Whereas if you go, ooh, this happened today. I turned up like that. That's not my best version. This is not who I am, define myself as. And so you basically then just go, so how would I like to turn up next time? So this you have the conversation again, and it's a bit of NLP, etc., because you then reframe the whole thing, so you don't suffer those icky guilt and shame emotions. You make it constructive, and then you play it out, and then the next time that situation comes up, you're prepared for it. You go, "Ooh, no, I actually know what I want to do today in this situation." Anyway, that's my small contribution. Enjoy.
No, I love that because I actually had a situation yesterday. Like I got off of something last night and I was really quite, and it wasn't the experience itself. I mean, it was my reaction to it. And spent a not a huge amount of time last night, but a little bit of time last night kind of reflecting on my reaction and what happened and what about it was trying to tell me or what I valued that wasn't being fulfilled or completed, that all of a sudden I had this feeling or whatever. And not that I got up and I felt any different today. Like I didn't get up in the morning and it wasn't gone, but I also didn't push it away. And I was and I love the fact that you brought in because I probably will be in a similar situation just because I'm not going to give up and, like not be in this group because I value the people that are in it and appreciate what they're sharing. I thought, oh, like, and as you said that, I'm like, well, how could I prepare and go in differently? Like, what could I do to not, to kind of sit there within myself to come to sort of like to understand that part of myself and to realize that whatever it is, it's not a threat or whatever I'm feeling, and just work with it, and so it's all a process. So thank you for bringing that up because it really reminded me that that's what I need to do.
Thanks, John. And it's a pleasure. The thing that comes up for me is like, I mean, I have very strong boundaries about certain things. And there was this group I was invited to, and there's like 4,000 people there. And I know I could make an impact, but then I discovered that, and I apologize for this, but I discovered the people that ran and managed the group are very much into belief systems and not facts. And they also at the same time support Trump.
Mhm.
So I was like, there is no way I can be part of this. However beneficial it could have been for me on many levels, it's like core principles of mine are being challenged. And then who am I to turn up in the world with anything or as me if I'm willing to forego my values and principles just because I might get some kind of recognition. And before I discovered that, I was doing really well with all the people there and they were great. And then I was just like, I'm not going to be able to sleep with but live with myself or sleep with myself.
Probably
Anyway,
both.
yeah,
Probably
exactly.
both.
I would because I got really stressed about it. It's like and when that feeling is so strong, no, I can't do this. I really can't. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a gift when you can walk away from those situations. Like you don't need to participate. It's a lot more challenging if you happen to live with them or they're your family. And and then all of a sudden, like, I was having this conversation yesterday with somebody about family or whatever, and then all of a sudden it's kind of like, well, how much can I like be around them and kind of still keep my integrity and my authenticity and my, and not feel like I'm compromising who I am. But I've been in similar situations, Paul, as you described, and where I had to step back from certain groups because the difference in what I felt was were our values and the value of human beings was not, they were not on, like, it was not, it was not going to work. There were, I'm like, I don't think I can be in this space. It would be like almost like feeling like I had like rough material on my skin and it was irritating. I was like, I was like, ooh, no, I don't think I can be here kind of feeling.
And John, when it comes to family and stuff like that, you value family. I know from talking to you,
Yeah, I
and
do.
you've worked hard for that. So you don't have to beat yourself up for it. Or not. I'm not saying you do beat yourself up. I'm just saying, I mean, if you value family, then that you make compromises. But if you value beyond family, though, if you value certain things, and like I mentioned, it's like, I've always walked away from money rather than give up on the things and the integrity that I want to bring into the world.
Hmm.
On And so for me, the people often think, oh, he likes money, it's all about money, but it's because they don't really know me. The thing is, yeah, I love money, I have no issue with it. I like eating nice food, etc. But my values are more, the fact that I want to empower people and to be in an environment where, they smile at you and it's nice and all that, but you can't help but think, but underneath all that, you support that. And then it's like there's a disconnect that completely messes with my head. I'm
Hmm.
like, no, I've got to be out of here.
Yeah, no, I understand completely.
Well, as long as we can recognize our role.
Especially these days.
Hmm.
I understand.
Yes, as long as we can recognize our wolves, we can, politely turn them away, right? If we want to.
If we want to. And maybe we, like you said, but we're, in some circumstances, we might be able to, be around, certain individuals, kind of thing. Depending on, I think that, to me, if there's a mutual respect,
Mm,
um, if there's, some sort of, you know, don't like, let's say, I'm gonna say you hide what you believe, but don't try to me to for like, don't try to force whatever you believe on me.
yes.
Then there's, and that's when you talk about boundaries, there's a boundary of, this
Yeah,
is something I value, this is something I really value, and it's not up for negotiation. Like, treating people with kindness or not looking at someone different because they look different or whatever it is, or they practice different, or they have a different sexual preference, whatever it is. Don't, like, human beings are valuable. And I'm sorry, that's non-negotiable, you
Yeah.
know. And if you cross that line, okay, I'm gone. Because then, then everything is, to me, then that, everything disintegrates.
I think this is related to boundaries, or sorry, the boundaries is related to intentions as well, John. Like everything we've been speaking about for the last while, has come to mind around like other people's intentions can be a great gift or a great burden, and the burden is on the person because they only know from what intention their action is coming from. You know what I mean? So, and I think there's great comfort in allowing ourselves to hand over the burden of that intention to the person who's acting, because and let go of any kind of association we have with they've said something, that they've acted in a certain way. I think when they act with good intentions, it's a gift for themselves and for other people. When they act with maybe ill intent, with ill intent, then it's a burden on them. And I think allowing yourselves to let the person carry that burden, and allow ourselves to free ourselves of their intent, especially when it's it coming from a place of ill intent. I think there's great practice in that comes around from the practices we've been talking about today, from stillness and getting curious with and allowing, is to be able to see through that, when a person is acting in a certain way and we begin to get curious with it, for me at least, there's great power in being able to actually um, and comfort in the fact that, well, if they've acted in a certain way, they only know whether they're acting with good intent or ill intent, and that's their burden to carry, I suppose, you know?
Mm-hmm. No, thank you, Seamus. Agree. Intention is really key. Um, Sort of knowing where someone's coming from and knowing what you might label it as their agenda. Um, what their actual, what's behind what they are, putting forward. And therefore, sometimes it feels like demands on us, or and in a way it is what they're asking us or who they're asking us to be. Um, so yeah, love that. So Mary Jane, should we move into the meditation, you think?
I think it's a good time, and just thank you for bringing such beautiful insights, everyone. And we appreciate, of course, you being here. So yeah, Jan, take it away.
Sure. So begin by finding a comfortable position. Allow your body to settle, your feet grounded, hands resting easily. Allow your shoulders to soften or to release down a little bit. Bring your attention to your breath, not changing it, just noticing it. Inhaling gently and exhaling slowly. Bring your attention to your heart, where breath and feelings meet. And silently affirm, I'm here and I am listening. Imagine yourself in a quiet, peaceful place. There is a warm fire nearby, steady, gentle, and welcoming. Beside the fire is a small table with 2 cups of tea steaming softly. You become aware that you are not alone, but one by one, the 2 wolves of your inner world arrive. One wolf carries the energy of fear, protection, grief, old stories. This wolf has worked hard to keep you safe, secure. Notice how it stands, how it breathes, what it feels like to be in its presence. The other wolf carries the energy of love, courage, joy, hope. This wolf reminds you of your strength and your capacity for compassion. We do not ask either wolf to leave. We do not choose one over the other. Instead, you gently invite them both to sit with you by the fire. You offer each a cup of tea, a simple gesture, a welcome, a sign that they too belong. Silently say, you are welcome here. You both matter. Notice what happens as the wolves settle. Perhaps a relaxation of the stance. Perhaps one draws closer to the warmth of the fire. Perhaps they simply just rest there. There is no need to fix them, no need to change them, only to be present. With each breath, allow the fire to represent awareness, steady, calm, and kind. It does not judge. It does not push away. It simply warms and illuminates what is already there. Repeat softly within yourself, I make space for all that I am. I belong to myself. Awareness is my home. Sit for a few moments in this quiet circle. You, the fire, and the two wolves. Feel the sense of companionship. Feel the possibility of peace that comes from being seen and accepted. If any emotions arise, greet them like visitors. Let them take a seat by the fire. Let them have a sip of tea. Let them be held in awareness. Now gently bring your attention back to your breath, back to the feeling of your body and the space you're in, back to your heart and its cadence. One final affirmation. All parts of me are welcome. All my wolves can rest. I am whole. Mary Jane, would you like to close with our blessing?
I definitely can do that. Um, so it's a closing blessing for awareness for all our parts, all our wolves, and one dance, and it's titled "The Fire of Many Wolves." As you step from this circle, may you remember you are not one single self, but a sacred pack of many. There is a tender wolf within you, soft-eyed and honest, carrying the places that long to be held. There is a brave wolf, steady in the dark, walking beside fear without needing to banish it. There is a playful wolf, full of spark and mischief, reminding you that joy is part of wholeness too. There is a weary wolf, asking only for rest, for gentleness, for permission to soften. There is a fierce protector, howling at the edges, not to harm, but to keep you safe, in the only way it knows. And there is a wise wolf, quiet as moonlight, waiting for stillness so it can speak. None of these wolves are wrong. None are too much. Each carries a story. Each carries a gift. And today, we do not send any part away. We gather them home. We invite them to sit together around the fire of compassion, around the warmth of love, around the remembering that you were never meant to do this alone. This is the dance, not of perfection, but of presence. One heart, many voices, one inner wilderness learning harmony. May you walk forward with your wolves beside you, not in conflict, but in companionship. And may you always find your way back to the fire, to the circle, to community. to yourself.
Thank you all so much for being here today. We appreciate each of you and your contribution. If you're watching in the future, feel free to leave a comment. Wishing you a great weekend. Stay safe and just know that we're here for you. Please feel free to reach out. We're in the process of our 4-week series with Darlene, and so session 3 is March 4th, and so that's exciting. And Mary Jane, our first workshop of the year, our workshop together is on March 14th, and so we're very excited about that. And so please feel free to join us. Have a great day, everybody.
Yes, and just as a reminder, before we close off, is that for our next week, we will not be doing this conversation just because of some conflict in and stuff happening in our schedules and stuff. So we look forward to welcoming you back the following week, and feel free to revisit any of the conversations we've had so far, and reach out, of course, as always. Have a blessed weekend, everyone.
Yes, many blessings.
Thanks, guys.